So, guys, welcome to you both. And as I said, while Shabnam is just getting her computer into order, I'll introduce you both. So, Shabnam, I think we first met on the same conference that we were talking about with Jason this morning,
Yeah,
and where you were introducing part of you were doing our job, which is introducing a lot and co-moderating. And so, Shabnam is an intersectional educator, coach, and advocate working in a variety of organisations and communities across the North East and Cumbria. And I mean, one of the things when I was looking at some of your work, the interesting part of your writing on dewdrop, I found that really fascinating and really insightful work. And then I suppose just introduce Shani. Shani is a writer, content creator, educator, poet, and a PhD researcher in a fascinating area of the, if I have it right, Shani, the effect or the impact of trees on poetry. Is that right?
Yeah, I'll say a little bit more, I guess, when we start our discussion, but basically it's trees and poetry.
Which I thought was, and I know in reading the comments on your PhD was really wonderful that it's seen as groundbreaking and the ability to shift the field in a certain direction, which I thought was lovely. So Shabnam, over to you. Shani, over to you.
thank you.
We're going to start with a poem.
Yeah.
When you ask where I'm really from, what can I say?
I'm as vast as the sea's multitudinous sway, and the storms I have weathered, you'll never deny me. The places I come from are places inside me, and England is mine, and it owes me a living. The things I have got, I deserve to be given.
Are you asking for history? What's in a name? A mirror of memory from a line of saints, Tyneside toughened, hard to shatter, nut brown, ale pale, rain-soaked patter, glinting shards in your grey matter. My nationality? To round it down, I'm Welsh, Scottish, Irish, English, and brown.
With a Persian name handed like recipes down from Bengali grandparents in a northern town.
And if you go barking up my family tree, it's a flowering bower, roots deep as the sea, and its branches reach corners that you'll never see, and your kind's paltry poison won't get rid of me.
How can history be lost if we're making it now, paying slaveholders off with the sweat of our brows?
But I won't tick your boxes when making my mark, and you'll be the one who stays locked in the dark when you can't file me neatly away on your shelf.
Other, please specify.
I am myself.
Well, we hope you kind of enjoyed that poem. That I am only taking part in reading it. That was all Shani's work. The title of our talk, Other, Please Specify, and the title of the poem comes from the title of the poem. And you might be kind of wondering, well, why is it called that? Both of us, as educators, and perhaps yourselves as in the therapy world as well, will have been asked to fill out those forms about equality and diversity where you're asked to tick the boxes. And both Shani and I, we have multiple identities, intersectional identities as well, not just multiple ones, but the ways that they intersect are unique to us. And everybody else will have, other people will have intersectional identities. So we wanted to kind of talk about that and talk about how our other identities intersect with our autistic identities. So I'm just going to, as Monica kind of introduced me, so my name's Shabnam. I'm a cisgendered brown woman from the North East with Bangladeshi heritage. I am an educator and a mother of four wonderful neurodivergent children, one of whom is sitting here right now. I lecture at Leeds Beckett University on primary ITE programs, and I'm the anti-racist educational lead for Anti-Racist Cumbria. And I also do a lot of work for the National Autistic Society and have my own consultancy. So I'm going to hand over to Shani.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Shani Cadwallender. I am all of the things that Monica said before. So I'm a teacher, I'm a PhD student, I'm a poet, and I'm, to kind of list my categories: mixed race, North Eastern, working class, queer, neurodivergent, disabled. And it always feels weird listing those categories as if, I don't know, like it's some sort of performance, like some sort of like joke about like wokeness. But the reason I list them is not because I want to reify them as categories to divide, but more because more to illustrate that real lives actually are intersectional. People like me really do exist. So today we're going to have a little discussion mainly about our neurodivergence and particularly our autism, but also how those things interact with otherings that we experience in our various marginalized positions, I guess you'd call them. Mum, do you want to introduce the means by which we're going to decide on
by which exactly? So Shani's going to talk a little bit about some other projects that we're involved in later on. But one of so we kind of thought about how to have these conversations, and we came up with a way of trying to keep on track, actually, as well, because with both of us having aspects of ADHD, we can sometimes go off on one, or we can just disappear down the rabbit hole. So I have with me here, how can you tell that I was a primary teacher? I have with me here, this is our neurodivergence. And this is how we're going to select the topics that we're going to talk about. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this. Okay, got number 4, Shani.
Okay. Number 4. Well, this is a good one to start with, actually, because we were just talking about both of us being AuDHD. How do you manage the conflicting aspects of AuDHD and autism?
That's a good one. Good one. Well, so we both we have affectionate terms for autism and ADHD. So whenever we refer to our autism, we call it our nerd, the nerd side of our personality. And when we talk about our ADHD, we talk about our slacker side of our personality, because I think it was kind of, well, that you coined it, actually, Shani. I'm sure you coined that, and I thought that's such a great way to describe it. That when I kind of disappear down, so some of my rabbit holes, or I'm quite monotropic, then I get quite nerdy. So that's I thought that was a great way of describing my autistic side. And my slacker side is that kind of goes off and just leaves tasks unfinished and starts another task. So yeah, it's I like the term, those terms that we've got, and it is really, I find it really difficult to manage that tension between them, because one is always pulling at the other. But I feel like I'm more slacker than nerd. So my ADHD pulls harder than my autistic side, which in my life, in my everyday life, in my academic life, causes a bit of that can cause some issues. So if I think about, so I'm also a master's student. I'm thinking about my studying and doing my completing this this master's, then it's very difficult to get sort of started on tasks and then to keep going without getting distracted. It's sort of, and I feel myself, I kind of start thinking, oh, am I just like, am I just lazy? Am I literally just, I can't be bothered? But it isn't about that. It's that I am deeply, passionate about what I want to do, but it's just really difficult to then get started and keep on task. And then there are other days where I can just absolutely not do anything else, that focus happens. But the problem being is that I really find it hard to choose which days that I can't choose, which days that's going to happen. So yeah, it's, I think one of the ways that how do I manage it? Recently, I've discovered that body doubling helps. So body doubling is having somebody there, just having somebody alongside you doing something similar, so that you kind of almost, I kind of go, oh, that person's sitting there doing some studying, I'll do some studying. But it isn't to be confused with, then going to the library, for example, if we're talking about an academic. That isn't quite the same. It's I kind of just need my one person to be doing that. And I find it doesn't even have to be in person. So sometimes it can be a virtual body doubling. One of the recent essays that I finished writing for my MA, one of my peers, one of my friends, was kind of WhatsApping me at the same time, and so I had it on the screen, and they were kind of messaging there, even their little distractions, even sort of, because they too are neurodivergent, surprise, surprise, like most of my friends are. So they were kind of typing away there, and it just felt like that kept me going, So I don't know, but that's a new thing. What about you?
There are a couple of things that came up in the chat. Firstly, we're certainly not implying they're affectionate nicknames for ourselves.
Oh gosh, yes.
Than describing, nerd has a negative connotation, slacker has a negative connotation, but the affectionate side of it is that a slacker is someone who's a bit lazy, who can't quite be bothered. But it's also a cultural phenomenon whereby people sort of reject the mainstream and reject kind of capitalist function in society. And by the same token, a nerd is somebody who's like intensely interested in their likes in a way that might be alienating to others, but actually that's a strength. Like a nerd is also someone who's an expert. So when I was using those terms, I was kind of making fun of myself for the typical behaviours that show themselves when.
Oh gosh, absolutely. Oh, we really are. This is about reclaiming, and so I think somebody put in the chat there. Sorry, because I've moved my screen. That are you trying to reclaim? I mean, I think both of us we reclaim a lot of language, right? Because we can, because actually our intersectional identities, as Shani said, it's not about making those identities some kind of thing that we have to stick to. But it's saying, actually, this is me. This is absolutely who I am. And so we've affectionately reclaimed those terms. We use, within our family, it's kind of it's a well-known thing, and
having a
proud thing. So I'm absolutely a proud slacker. It's definitely about resisting the mainstream, resisting authority. But I mean, I could go into PDA because that's also another one of my traits, demand avoidance. So, but yeah, I'm going to go. What about you, Shani? Then what?
Well, I think I'm more nerd than slacker, actually, by nature, which I think has been something of an advantage structurally, because when it comes to kind of organization, order, routine, sticking to a plan, the nerd side tends to win out over the slacker side. And I think that meant that I was able to kind of pass more easily in school, which I guess like shouldn't be celebrated as a virtue. I think maybe there's lots of things that were missed there. But I guess I'm similar to you. I don't think that I think they're in tension all the time, the two sides, but I almost don't think of them even as sides. I think of them as coexistent, as a kind of like the tension is constant. There's a kind of liminal space where I exist, where like the nerd and the slacker are both there together. So sometimes it works really well, because the nerd is able to sit down and do 6 hours of research, and then the slacker can get up on a stage and perform a poem. But sometimes if the balance is out, it's very difficult to then do the things that, you know, ADHD traits might allow for more easily if kind of one side is activated. Someone put in the chat nerd mode activated. I really like that. Yeah, so I find that I kind of I go into a bit of a fugue state, as I call it, if I'm really, really intensely focused on a project. And so hyper focus has been like an advantage academically, but it's also been it also kind of stops me from thinking about anything else, and I find it very difficult to switch between activities, which seems like a trait of lots of neurodivergent states. So yeah, I think it's managing the conflicting aspects was what the question was about, and I think there is conflict. There's also ways in which the two marry up quite nicely, but that depends on a situation in which you firstly understand yourself and your neurotypes, and in which, like, a situation in which you're able to find a niche that works for you. Like, I'm doing a creative critical PhD project, so I'm writing poetry and I'm doing research, and kind of marrying the two up, which is a very niche area, and not everybody gets to pursue their niche, I suppose.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, it's kind of interesting. I haven't really heard of body doubling before, in getting a task done that you don't want to do. That is a really interesting idea. And I wondered when you said that if it was a little bit about safety as well, like about like kind of your nervous system settled with some who you said it's got to be one of your people. It can't just be anyone. You can't just go to a library.
Yeah.
I wondered if you felt it as a kind of like a physical settling down when you when somebody, one of your people, is sitting next to you doing a thing.
I think so. I think it is very much about the nervous system, and that's again something that I've sort of more recently started to research, because my friend Lindsay, she is she's a somatic experience practitioner, and she's done, she's kind of talked to me a lot about it and about how our different neurodivergent traits are trigger our nervous system, and how we can use the nervous system to manage them. And I almost, it's like that word managing as well. I'm not always keen on that, on sort of it seems, there is still, I mean, you were talking about like different contexts, right? And in contextual situations, we're going to find ourselves up against ableism, and environments that are not created to suit us. So I sometimes I feel resistant to managing it, and kind of want to go with the flow, and be whichever my nerd or my slacker is kind of taking the lead at that particular point. But we're unfortunately we're still living in a society that doesn't understand And so, you know, I am sometimes a bit resistant to wanting to manage it. But yeah, the body doubling is, so it's let's say, a new phenomenon for me. It is a new phenomenon. But I always feel like I can get on with things better if somebody else is here. So if I'm on my own, so I'm single parent, and but I have my two of my other kids live with me. And if I'm completely on my own, I really sort of flounder, and I find myself not being able to function. You know, and ordinary things like eating, or you know, getting up and getting dressed is a real sort of struggle. But if somebody's there, it's almost like, oh, they're doing that. I can do it too, you know. So
you sort of slot into their routine.
Yeah, very much so. So that's one kind of way I think of managing it. It's quite good. Or if I like give you, like, if we have a call, you know, and you're like, oh, I'm going to go out for a walk, or I'm like, oh, okay, I can do that too, you know. And it really does help with sort of managing day to day sort of stuff. Oh, there's something in the chat here from David. Thanks, David. Doubling technique by Moreno containing doubling. Oh, it's disappeared. Sorry. I'll maybe look into that. But it sort of, it certainly helps. I find. I don't know. Okay. Are we throwing the dice again?
Yeah, let's throw the dice again.
Let's throw the neurodivergent. Okay. 6. Throwing a 6.
A 6. Okay. Okay. How did your family context affect you in terms of autism? That can be a broad question. Like,
do you want to answer this one first?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like in as you can all see, it's pretty latterly in my life pretty positive. Like, my mum advocates for neurodivergent people. I only recently was diagnosed like a year ago, autistic. So yeah, I think like you're actively making an effort to break generational trauma patterns from recurring, and thinking about neurodivergence and like advocating for neurodivergent people. So that's obviously great. But I think growing up, there was no real, like, I grew up in the North East in the 90s, and kind of like being left-handed was considered just like a huge barrier. Like, it was, you know, just so considered so disruptive to have any needs whatsoever. So I think there was, you know, effectively when I was in primary school, there was quote unquote no such thing as autism. Like, autism was something that people had if they went to special schools, and was kind of associated with being nonverbal, or, you know, kind of like quote unquote disabled, profoundly disabled. So yeah, so I didn't really know anything about autism growing up, and I think there were other factors, racism and economic precarity, that affected kind of our household when I was growing up, which meant that, you know, it was sort of the least of our worries in a way, whether I was neurodivergent or not. But I did feel a kind of a sense of difference from my peers, that's for sure. And I experienced the diagnosis as a relief, because I thought, oh, that's it. That's one of the, or at least that's one of the things. That's one of the reasons why. And it was a very kind of white majority part of the world, County Durham, and small town. So I was one of like very, very few brown people, and there were no other mixed race people as far as I knew, in living in my town. So it was I kind of assumed as a child that the reason I felt different was because of those differences, those kind of external differences. But yeah, but I also think that being neurodivergent probably made that part of my life more bearable, because
that's really interesting. Yeah.
I had my like intense interests. I had my kind of interior life. and I thought I was different from other people in ways that they couldn't access, like that they couldn't touch, because they might make fun of me for my skin color, they might make fun of me for being terrible at sports or whatever, but they couldn't touch the part that was different, like different in the way that I felt it, I guess. And maybe queerness too, there's like an overlap there for sure, which, you know, was something as a child I, you know, hadn't fully realized until I was a little bit older. But yeah, I think there's lots of things going on there, isn't there? Like racism kind of, in a way, was a mask that meant that, like, it was a level that meant that we didn't even kind of investigate neurodivergence as a possibility. And then there was the kind of systemic understanding of neurodivergence at that time, which was quite delimiting and quite sort of putting people into boxes of like ability or otherwise, functioning or otherwise. Yeah, and then there was like the positive side, I suppose, which was that I felt myself different in a good way.
I think that where I know that for a fact, as a family, we celebrated being different, like really affirmed that, and maybe even celebrating is not the right word, actually affirming like weirdness, you know, again, reclaiming another word, weird. We use the word weird in our family
as a compliment.
Because if you're normal, you know, that's not a compliment. To be weird is to be wonderful. So I think that having all of those different ways of being slightly weird in that space had a massive impact on. And it's interesting what you say about mask, like the other things became the mask. You know, race, etc. You know, our kind of, you know, working class family, all of those things sort of to became a mask for the thing that people actually mask, you know, when we mask our autism.
And I guess I don't mean by that that neurodivergence is the ultimate thing, you know, like that. I'm out about myself, I had the key to my identity. I more mean, I guess for other people, where would they locate my difference? Well, it would probably be firstly in racial terms, and then in maybe class terms secondly, but they probably wouldn't have been like, well, she's really, really into cats, you know. They probably wouldn't have thought that was that unusual. And again, that's, I guess, to do with sex, you know, like as a girl being really interested in certain things like dolls and cats, and being kind of quietly interested.
Quietly interesting. But yeah, I mean, that's sort of like you talk about gender there, you know, and the aspects of how gendered roles have a big impact on discovering neurodivergence, and then also being able to thrive with neurodivergence. I mean, use thrive, not manage. Thrive with neurodivergence, because and then those other intersections. So a mixed heritage girl. You know, there are so many connotations that come with that about being polite and being quiet and being, you know, very, which is sort of different to, you know, sort of friends of mine who talk about it, about being
on the floor,
female and black, you know, and the tropes that exist for that intersection. So for sort of our intersection, the brownness, the Asianness. You're curious about the toys behind me, David. There's a whole load of Lego. Again, how can you tell me that your family is neurodivergent without telling me? Needless to say, I also made some of these. They're not just like, you know, they're not kids just the kids. Where was I? Can't remember. Oh yeah. So for me, how did my family context affect me? So both my parents, I am convinced, are neurodivergent. I think my mother is has more autistic leanings, and that my dad's absolutely ADHD. A lot of their traits will also have been missed because of intersections, So being Bangladeshi, coming here in the late 60s, coming here at a time of aggressive racism, Enoch Powell's Rivers of Blood, being brought here back to the motherland, to support and develop and grow the NHS, all of that contextual stuff. And the trauma, both of them being, children, very young children during partition. There's so much there that, again, like masks, like you're saying, Matt, will mask what is seen. And I think culturally as well, you were talking about how when you were a child that autism, was seen as something very different, even more than it.
Oh, your sound's gone a bit funny.
Oh, sorry. Don't know what's going on there.
The closer you are to your computer, the clearer the sound is.
Oh, right. Okay, I'll come a little bit closer. I didn't think I had moved that far away. So I think that, that certainly had, I will have experienced a sort of, that I had to mask everything, but also that certain traits, I think, certainly in my experience of South Asian culture, in my experience of Bangladeshi culture, are taken as normal, and so won't have been highlighted, and again, because of gendered roles and so on. So, like, I was an extremely emotional child, crying at the drop of a hat, or getting angry at the drop of a hat, and not being able to regulate my emotions, and not, and beyond those typical milestones, if you like. So those things should have been picked up. Now, if I think about, as an educator, as somebody who sort of worked in inclusion in schools, those things would have been picked up, particularly if it had been a little white girl, for example. And when I talked to my mom, it's really interesting that she had those similar things. I mean, so in typical Bangladeshi culture, you have two names. So you have your formal name, which Shabnam is mine, and you have like a family pet name. And so my name is Seema at home. My mum's pet name is Jorna. Well, Jorna in Bangla means rainstorm. And it's because she would do the same, cry at the drop of the hat for no given reason. And she was given this pet name because of that. But culturally, autism, and being, sort of discussions around regulating emotion, and how to do that in different contexts, sensory issues wouldn't have been explored. So I think that certainly delayed, any kind of identification.
And I guess if you're operating in a context where, like, your personality doesn't, and how your brain works doesn't get medicalized or pathologized.
Yeah.
It's just like, this is Shabnam. She gets angry a lot.
Yeah.
And sort of meet her where she is, meet her on her terms, then that's good. But very often, though, even those perceived kind of personality traits or personality defects are policed.
Yes.
Even if it's like, we accept Jorna cries all the time, but we would rather she didn't, kind of thing, you know, if that behavior is being policed.
Yeah, and that's a really pertinent point, because I think, again, we're talking about contextual impact, right? So in Bangladesh, so I was born here. I was sent as a baby back to Bangladesh for my grandparents, because I was the eldest grandchild. And it seems from stories that I hear, and you know, that within that cultural context, those differences were accepted. You know, in a outside of the colonial impact and the colonial influence on community and how people exist and how people live. Those sorts of things were accepted. And when your nanny talks about her nickname and what, you know, it was accepted in much more of a way. Whereas here, certainly as a child, if, you know, I was told to be quiet and stop that and don't, you know, because it wasn't seen as the right thing to do, because other people would be looking or commenting. You know, so yeah, context is a huge. It becomes where policing of those traits then happens, right?
Well, in family context, I guess, doesn't just mean the characteristics of your family, but also the context in which they found themselves. So
yeah,
we were in a very racist context.
Yeah.
Any behavior that was likely to attract attention was considered a negative behavior. But you know, presumably in a context with less racism or no racism to contend with, that wouldn't have been such a consideration. Like, you know, don't draw attention to yourself. It's the kind of classic immigrant feeling of like, blend in, just be as quiet as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. Integrate and assimilate, and don't you don't be different. Precisely. Yeah. Okay.
We banged on. Shall we have another question?
Yeah, we always bang it on.
We do. This is what our phones are like every.
Right. Okay. Here we go.
Yeah. Let's roll the die.
We've got 6 again. 3.
3.
Okay.
So let's talk about late diagnosis.
Ooh. Okay.
Late diagnosis affected you. We've talked about this a bit already, but why do you think your neurodivergence was not noticed sooner, either by you or by other people? So maybe let's talk about late diagnosis. How does that focus on that?
So late diagnosis. So I don't have a formal diagnosis, and I know somebody was talking about this earlier in the previous conversation about, you know, that without a diagnosis, you don't get noticed, you don't get counted. And so I'm self-diagnosed because it kind of finally dawned on me that oh, hang on, yes, this is me, not just the children I work with, and you know, and it sort of came about from my youngest, from Mio, when he was diagnosed at 3, and the wonderful practitioner who I worked with as a head teacher, she sort of saying, well, okay, so which one of you 2 is it? And I kind of, yeah, I thought, you know, and she's like, no, seriously, well, which one of you is it? Because I think I know. And it sort of started me off on this, you know, on that journey. But how was it, the lateness of that affected me? So I mean, yeah, we talked a little bit about why we think that happened. I think it happened because, as I say, you know, you get labeled. We have so many labels and so many little tropes to fit into that nobody looked for beyond that. You know, I was a South Asian girl. I was quiet. I kind of got things done. I was very good at managing those last minute deadlines. You know, I was very good at covering my tracks. So I became an expert at masking all of those things because I had to, because I didn't want to stand out, and I, you know, and so on. But since then, it's kind of it's highlighted, I think, that what might have been seen as just my personality were actually signs of that, of, you know, a particular neurotype that you know, and because I kind of suffered a lot from imposter syndrome of like, well, I can't, you know, I can't possibly be doing this. But I was just kind of went on like, you know, everything is fine. Oh, it's all right. It's okay. Everything will be all right. No, and nobody will find me out, but maybe they will. So I was kind of always acting and living in this heightened sort of, you know, experience of my nervous system. Always in this sort of flight or fright, you know, very rarely freeze. And that kind of left me burnt out. And so when I left teaching, I was really confused about, well, it can't have been because of stress, because I loved the stress, you know, absolutely. I lived for the stress of being a head teacher and the challenge and so on. And nothing new would happen. So I was like, well, why hasn't this happened before? Why haven't I not, you know, why have I not burnt, like, sort of had to leave teaching from stress before? Why can I now? And I think it was not the stress of the child, but the stress of constantly masking and living up in a way that, you know, that was not me and was not conducive to the way my brain was working. But other people.
I was just going to say it's interesting what the kind of place you started from was saying, like, gender and racial stereotypes almost like gave you a framework to live up to, or to like box yourself in with, as much as like, and other people were judging you by those stereotypes. So it was almost as if you never had the chance to discover who you were. Either in terms of your neurodivergence or anything else, really. Like, it was, well, this is how Asian girls should be.
It was very much about not wanting to be found out in any way, shape, or form. You know, because if I acknowledge that, a bit like what you were saying, you know, that in a way that you, it was kind of, the opposite to what you were saying, that you kind of found solace in that. There was like, not my solace, you found like great comfort and affirmation in that, well, yeah, but you can't take away this bit, that like how I'm weird on the inside. I was it was more about not wanting to be found out yet again about something else, you know, because it would be another way to be othered. And that really, I think, subconsciously, I was worried about being defined by a diagnosis. Being defined by my neurotype.
Just another box for other people to put you in, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And a little bit about, you know, like sort of why it wasn't noticed. I guess going for diagnosis means like having to do what somebody in authority tells you to do. I mentioned PDA before, you know. I hasten to add, I don't like the P bit, but the, you know, demand avoidance rather than it being pathological. But that's something that if somebody tells me, oh, well, you need to go and do this, I'm like, no, I don't. No, I'm not doing it, you know. So I think that played a part in it, but it's what it's meant is that now I am, you know, comfortable in what I am and who I am, you know, unapologetic about that, unapologetic about how I am different. So, you know, I think I see now there are more diagnostic practitioners, more therapeutic practitioners who affirm autism, you know, that it is, that they affirm the difference, instead of those ideas that autism needs to be corrected.
Yeah.
So I think a kind of warming a little bit more to the kind of notion of diagnosis. But you like kind of gone and done it.
Yeah. I you know, gave in to the man, did what he said. Yeah. But yeah, I sought a diagnosis because of Milo, and also like my two younger brothers, and my mum were kind of either diagnosed or self-diagnosed as autistic, and I thought that now that I know a bit more about this, it sounds like me. It sounds like maybe it's me. So I called my GP, and actually she ended up referring me also for an ADHD kind of assessment because of what I described as being like some of the issues that came up, I thought, as a result of being neurodivergent. Which were things I mentioned before, kind of going into a fugue state and, you know, not really eating all day and being like really hyper-focused. And it was during my PhD, when I first started my PhD, that I noticed this. And I guess, I'm sure many people here have done a PhD. It can be, especially in the humanities, a very lonely activity. Your project is your own, you do your own research, and you have to be kind of driven by your own internal motor. There's no kind of external deadlines to be met, I suppose. So up until that point, I had never really thought, oh, I've got any issues with procrastination, or with particularly with anything, actually. I thought I had anxiety, like an anxiety disorder, because I was always like, things have to be a certain way. You know, I'm hyper interested in this thing. Anyway, so when I had my kind of diagnosis assessment appointment, the psychiatrist in question said, "Oh, you're doing a PhD. Lots of people doing PhDs get diagnosed with autism and or ADHD." And he said, you know, you might be surprised to learn you've got ADHD because looking at your CV, you've never left a job, you've never failed to finish a task that you've started. But actually, PhDs tend to be the first time in some people's lives that they haven't been able to motivate themselves. They haven't been able to organize themselves. There's been no external factors to influence their behavior. And so the coping mechanisms they may have developed through school, through university, to some extent at work, and I work as a teacher. So basically it's back to the same structure again, have like worked to kind of keep them going, like keep them moving. But then when they do a PhD, they suddenly have this free time, which they have to structure themselves. So it was interesting to hear that. So I think in terms of like getting a late diagnosis, it was in some ways, as I said before, a relief, because I felt as if I had an explanation for the deep internal difference that I felt between myself and other people. But I also feel kind of the opposite to you, Mum, which is absolutely classic nerd slacker dichotomy, that I felt having a diagnosis gave me made me legally entitled to advocate for myself, especially at work. It's an external framework with which to understand what's happening in my feelings, and I feel like it lends a kind of legitimacy, put that in quotes, because it's a kind of, you know, I guess, Western medicalized masculinist form of legitimacy, but it lends legitimacy to conversations about difference. So it's not just, oh, Shani likes to wear the same trousers in 5 colors. It's not just a preference, it's like, not like a necessity, but it's like it's part of my personality. It's to do with my neurotype. That's a bad example because it's kind of essentializing and makes it sound like we're cartoon characters. But I mean, yeah, things like at work, we would invigilate exams, external exams. We weren't allowed to take in anything to entertain ourselves. And you can imagine for someone with ADHD standing in a room for an hour, expected to focus on simultaneously everyone and nothing, is a challenge. So because I was diagnosed, I'm able to advocate for myself legally in terms of work. I've kind of felt that it's, two-pronged, both legally in terms of work and in terms of social relationships. It's given me this external framework to refer to. So I can say, well, it isn't just that I'm a wimp. I actually am experiencing rejection sensitive dysphoria right now, because what you said made me think that you were rejecting me in quite extremes. And I've found that super, super helpful as a way to understand my life. But that's the nerd, coming out. I'm like, a system. I love system.
Yeah, give me a system. I love a system. I want to have a system. And that's, I think that's, I mean, I guess that again reflects my demand avoidance, right? Because it's a no, I don't need somebody else to tell me that I can advocate for myself. I'm going to advocate for myself anyway. I mean, I'm quite a ballsy kind of person, so I will do that. But clearly, I didn't before. I didn't use that to advocate for myself. Always advocate for other people, and therefore neglected to see that in myself. To like, why did I not see it? I was working in school as a Senko my entire career, and working with children and their families. But to blindside myself, just like that, I clearly didn't have the confidence or the ability to advocate for myself in that way. But I think that I've forgotten how I was linking that together. But around sort of maybe that even coming to terms with it myself, like self-diagnosis, and saying yes, I am. It's kind of like coming out of the closet, When I started working at Beckett, that's the first time that I declared in a workspace, I am autistic, and that took a heck of a lot, of sort of courage to do that. But I think I tapped into that if I can't do it for myself, then how am I going to do that for other people? And I need to be able to. So I don't know.
Because I feel like I was just thinking about this morning, and I was thinking that my own, like the experience of advocating for other people or defending other people's rights, like finally, now that I myself am like all the things you would defend, I'm finally able to advocate for myself or to stand up for myself. It's kind of like finding these things out about myself, and like, these things that are happening to me, they're teaching me how to care for myself. Which is so weird because, like a lot of my life's been defined by that kind of work. Like, as teachers, you're standing up for things, or at least we hope so. I just saw David's comment, about the unreasonable person. The reasonable person adapts themselves to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to themselves. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable person. I love and I think
been called unreasonable quite a few times.
Well, yeah, like I think anybody who's asking for fairness is considered unreasonable now, or consideration. It's considered like a excessive to ask to be considered and respected. but it's not excessive. It's just what some people have the privilege to take for granted and others don't.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like it's a lesson in self advocacy and self care. I know self care is like an annoying buzz phrase, but self care, like genuine self care, where you're like, oh, me, I'm the person who needs standing up for, and you're finally doing it, which is like obviously great and a great model for me to follow.
Oh, yeah, that's cool. I'm just keeping an eye on time. We've got 10 minutes. Gail, do you think we got time for another one?
Usual.
Yeah, or whoever.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, how many more slides have you got? You got 2 more to go.
Wow. I mean, we'll give it another throw, and then yeah. All right. Okay. Number 2.
Okay. What are your thoughts and experiences around medication? Especially, well, for ADHD, this is more than autism, I suppose, because.
Okay. Should I go first? What do you want to do? Should I go first?
I can go first.
You've probably got more to say on that. That's all I'm thinking.
Yeah, I know this is a conference about autism, so I'm not going to go on too long because the two conditions are related. Condition may be the wrong word. I remember calling my GP and she said, there's no medication for autism, right? And I was like, yeah. Like being autistic is a state of mind. It's not a disease. And she was like, yeah, but I wondered if you would want the label if there's no kind of treatment available. Mm-hmm. And I was like, ooh, that's not ideal. That framing is not ideal, but I didn't want to I only had 10 minutes, so I didn't want to have that conversation with her. But I thought it was interesting that she kind of thought of ADHD and autism in similar terms and was kind of like, well, treatment could potentially be helpful. But in terms of ADHD medication, I ummed and ahed a little bit about whether I would pursue medication or try medication, because I worried that, I had seen children at school who had started ADHD medication and they had become just really sleepy. And I thought, well, is this a dulling or a subduing of who they really are, or of their kind of natural energeticness? But then I thought, I was so surprised that I had ADHD that I thought, well, I wonder what it could help with. I wonder, if they would suggest that I should take medication, because on these sort of, in terms of the stereotype of ADHD, I don't fit. So when I spoke to the diagnosing clinician, he kind of said, basically, that it would be a means by which I could do all the things that I was doing already without being as exhausted by doing them as I was. Mm. And it would hopefully quiet down some of the anxious voices in my mind. And I remember the first day that I took medication, and it was pretty crazy. I was listening to music and I was just listening to it. There were no in my mind, experiencing the music. And it was life-changing moment. So I am on medication. I'm still taking it now. I found it a little bit scary at first, because you've got to kind of get to the right dosage and all of that. But the clinician who diagnosed me and who prescribed this said, this is not about changing your personality. You should feel exactly like yourself, but you should feel less exhausted by everything that you're trying to do. So I'm on a relatively low dose, and I found it extremely helpful. And it has revealed things to me that I think were troubling behaviors, especially around snacking, that I didn't even, I thought I love snacks, but I didn't think of it as something that I was doing as a behavior to comfort myself, or as a dopamine rush type of thing. But I found it massively helpful. But I also I think everybody should make their own choices. And it may be something that I do long term. It may not. I think I'll go by how my life has been. But what it has done, I think, is bring my autistic traits more to the surface. I've always been more nerd than slacker, but now I feel like I'm able to be myself in a more authentic, is the wrong word, but
yeah.
And to pursue my interests and not be kind of derailed by other things, I guess.
Yeah, that so I'm going to come back to that, but like my initial thoughts around medication, because I was really concerned when you were like, I was like, oh, okay, don't say anything, it's not your thing to do. It's like, but my experience was because of the children in my school, in my class, and we're talking about back in the early 2000s, so like 2000 to 2010, and seeing medicated pupils as young as like sort of 7, 8, and the difference between when they didn't have their medication. And I just had this really strong feeling of that the medication was controlling who they were, and that it meant, as an educator, I then didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to modify my practice because this child is being dosed up on some drug. And I that did not sit with me at all. I was kind of, this is wrong. This is my duty. This is why I'm here. This is what I'm doing. I'm a teacher for a reason. This shouldn't be here to make my life easier. I should be doing something to change the environment, and at a time where education was heading, that neoliberal sort of stronghold was coming, it was really taking a hold. And it's more so now, where schools and classrooms are places where kids are straitjacketed, and put into those boxes. And to fight against that and to change your classroom environment so that it is truly inclusive, and that, to get away from those comments like, yes, but I mean, why would you change it just for that one child? It's like, well, hang on, we're not talking about this one child. We're talking about every child having differences that we're not acknowledging. We're trying to make them all the same so that we can, and don't get me wrong, there's pressures coming from abroad in terms of educators and the pressures of standards and so on, and of league tables and all of that. But that's part of the culture that we've allowed to take hold in society. This drive that, whether it's meritocracy and driven by sort of capitalism and all of that. But as an educator, I really felt so strongly that this was not the right thing to do. But again, I mean, I would kind of, seen the kind of impact that it's had on you, and other people have talked about it. I think it's, again, like I say, it's a very individual, it's an individual thing, and it's to do with the bit that kind of I'm always against, is because it's when it says, well, right, but how much of an impact can it make to you in your life? Can it make your life better? That voice is always there saying, yes, but like, why is it having to make it better? It's having to make it better because we live in this world that is, that doesn't take into account all of these differences, and we are the pressures to conform and the pressures to perform and be productive in only one way. There are ways of being productive that don't sit well within a capitalist patriarchal society, that they are still being productive. So that's why I think, I'm terribly sorry, I hope can you hear that noise out there? Oh, sorry, somebody drilling outside my so I kind of, I can feel that rising in me whenever anybody says, you know, or even if I was to say, well, you know, if medication makes your life easier, absolutely go for it. There's that. Yeah, but it shouldn't have to make it easier.
Well, it have to be easier. Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't.
do you know what I mean?
The poster child for medication. And obviously, like, I was in my mid-30s when I started taking medication after a lifetime of like coping mechanisms, like a lifetime of struggle to, you know, I've achieved the things that I've achieved without medication. But that was extremely hard. And I think maybe actually forced me into behaviors that were even more like negative, if you want to think.
Yeah, like kind of harmful behavior. Yeah.
Yeah, like drinking a lot and like
yes,
eat a lot of crisps, you know, like they're not extreme, but I think that some people with ADHD do have help me as an adult to sort of make what feel to me like clearer headed decisions, like with the personality. I think the crucial thing is that I don't feel like a different person. I feel like myself, not interrupted by like the people, the voices, the distractions that would disturb me normally.
Yeah, I mean that's so interesting, because I think if now I was to go and pursue formal diagnosis and then medication, I wonder, because you were saying that you felt like it's that your nerd has been able to come to the fore, actually, and I wonder what kind of person I would be, like what like, because I do feel that sort of, we haven't talked about this, but unmasking, right? You know, that whole process of unmasking that has happened, because again, late to the party, like, you know, started to look into this at 50. And I think that I wonder what kind of person I would be, because a lot of the decisions, again, I know I feel very much Girl Interrupted was who I was, you know, that I made decisions, poor decisions, because of the way that I was. But like, well, what kind of person would I be? You know, and I wouldn't want to change anything. That's I'm a strong believer in, you know, everything that you do brings you to this very point, right? And if you changed any of that, the person you're standing there right now wouldn't be there. But I do kind of wonder, well, what kind of, you know, what kind of person would I be if I was to kind of quieten those voices.
And I think it's something important to remember, and again, I'm coming off as the poster child for medication, but it's that it doesn't help with memory or executive function or being disorganized or like being incapable of being on time for things. Like, or for me, the only thing it does is just turn the volume down inside. And you can hear what your thoughts are. So I think, you know, you would still be late all the time.
Exactly. I would still be late all the time. I'd still be completely nuts. And
where you are.
It just wouldn't be so noisy in my head all the time. That might be that would be nice sometimes, isn't it? But I guess we also need to say that, you know, there are alternatives in terms of therapeutic alternatives that aren't. I mean, not that medication is easily accessible. You know, that it is a privilege as well. That kind of you know, and luck, as you know, luck, privilege, all those things. So it's not always readily available. And I know that, I mean, I talked before about somatic experiencing and you know, that kind of therapy that I do think could be an alternative, and again in learning how to quieten those voices.
And I do be in therapy of some kind. You know, I'm preaching to the choir. But yeah, I think it's, you know, medication's not going to do it by itself. Like, clearly, I mean, actually, when I was diagnosed, the psychiatrist said, "You're doing everything we would recommend, already in terms of your behavior, in terms of your lifestyle, in terms of like how you manage yourself. You're doing all the things that we would tell you to do if you had counseling or coaching.
Yeah.
So maybe the medication will just help you to do them without just being constantly exhausted. So I think there is, you know, it can't just like, it's not a panacea. It's not like make things easier and like instantly in a way that's unrelated to other behaviors. Yeah. Well, we've kept these good people hours. So maybe let's round up there.
Round it up.
A short.
I'm just going to show you my little seal. I just thought I'd show you my little seal that I've been playing with quietly under here.
Is that approval?
It's a little thingy toy, a little fidgety toy. And I just wanted to tell you a story of this because one of my students who actually but this is just wonderful, and she's going to be the most incredible teacher going out there for neurodivergent children and other children to just get them to understand it.
Your audio is really muffled.
Oh no!
People can put on captions if they want, because it's working on my thingy.
Oh yeah, great. Share.
Right. Okay, good idea. And she has done so much in getting me to affirm my autistic self by, I've never used fidget toys before, and I still felt really queer about doing that. And she sort of said, Shabnam, but why? Why, it's because you're a professional person doesn't mean that, if that's what you need, that's what you need. And so she's final student. She's going out. She'll be graduating next week. I'm really excited about seeing her across that stage. But she left me a little gift, and she said, "I've just left something on your desk. When you're in." And she'd left me these little fidget toys. I've got another one which is like a little octopus. And she also made me this bracelet, which just says "different, not less." And I just thought that's so lovely. And in terms of that affirming, aspect that we need to really take on, it just because I'm sitting here. Anyway, I'm withering on again. Go on, you round up, Charles.
Yeah, quick plug. We are going to be in the near future doing a podcast, also called Other Please Specify, which will be the same as this, hopefully better edited, less of us just banging on and on. But yes, it'll be about our experiences, intersectional lived experiences of neurodivergence and other things. It's going to be kind of lighthearted, but obviously touching on themes like this. So you can follow us on Instagram at other_please_specify. And actually, Mum, will you put stuff in the chat? Email addresses. If anybody has speaking engagements they want us to do, if you want us to come and speak somewhere near you or somewhere also online.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just get that.
And thank you for sitting still for such a massively long time on a hot day.
I've been doing this.
Yeah, me too. I've been moving around a lot. And thank you so much for having us today.
That's brilliant, guys. Thank you so much for that. I've been monitoring the chat like you both as you were talking, and I think I think the feedback seems to be really, really brilliant around that reclaiming of language, which is just so refreshing for people to be not kind of bound by these professional discourses, that making your own of it, I think, is brilliant. So I think what we're saying that we would go into the breakout rooms, but I'm not sure whether that would be appropriate. Gail, do you think we should stay in the bigger group and feedback directly?
Yeah, I think people are really enjoying hearing other people's comments and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, so certainly if people want to put up their hands or ask a question, reiterate what you've put in the chat. I'll try and keep an eye on the screen and see who's putting their hands up. Go ahead, Joe. I can see you.
Oh, hello. Thank you so much both for that. It was such a rich, whatever you would call it, presentation. It doesn't seem quite right. It was a lovely back and forth of conversation from a mum and a daughter, which is just so really beautiful to see. And it sort of helps me to think about my own daughter and the clients that I see as well. And it was really inspiring and so much content there to think about. I'm busy trying to find you on Instagram so I can send it to my. So thank you.
I think I've just typed it in the chat for Instagram. Somebody else has said, what's the name of the podcast? The podcast is also Other Please Specify. And when we go live, we'll probably use Instagram, LinkedIn, that kind of thing, to kind of to promote it. You'll be able to find us that way.
I just wanted to something that really interests me is medication, and having sort of worked in before I became family therapist, I was a mental health nurse, and I was thinking about how attitudes towards medication over the years, and it has been quite a few years, has changed. And I wonder I think that really interests me in terms of how people use medication, you know, especially in terms of neurodivergent people. Yeah. And that's very interesting to me as someone who works with a good number of people. So because I think there's been a fear of medication, hasn't there? But I happen to think there's a real good place for it, and I think perhaps you feel that, Shani.
Yeah, I think that there's a difference between pathologizing somebody's brain type and treating distressing symptoms.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, medication has treated distressing symptoms. And I think that, somebody doesn't become less human because they've got a chest infection and they need antibiotics. I feel the fear behind or around medication is to do with that sense of a fear of losing identity or losing your personality or being kind of drugged and subdued. But that hasn't been my experience at all with practitioners or with taking the medication. And I felt very, very actually kind of cared for during the whole process of titration and figuring out the dosage, all that kind of thing. And I think, but in my experience, there are people who the drugs have not agreed with them. They've tried all different kinds of things and it hasn't worked, or hasn't worked well for them. And that's legitimate. Obviously, all bodies are different and all minds are different. But for me, it's been, I would say kind of life-changing.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think that what Shani says there is that's it. It's about the pathologizing, because if correct, if you've got a chest infection or you need some treatment, then that doesn't make you less of a person. But I think it's the pathologizing of it. And I certainly saw that back in the 2000s with children, but like you say, it's changed, that, the actual medication itself has changed as well. It's not just, one load of Ritalin and that, for ADHD, and that was basically it. But I think, that idea of pathologizing, it's really interesting for me as an anti-racist practitioner. So looking at things, with a decolonial lens, right? Looking at everything with a decolonial lens, because there are, like I was saying about how productivity has been, kind of co-opted and sold to us in one particular form. It's the same sort of thing, isn't it? Treatment and medication, again, have been co-opted by big pharma and all of that sort of. So we kind of and therefore forgotten the word. People who doctors who give it out, the people who are prescribing, that for their attitudes to be the right one, that's where the kind of the change has happened. Shani, has been lucky to have received care from practitioners and prescribers who have seen you as a person who just needs this aspect. Actually, if we can help you with this aspect, then you can make sense of other, it will help you. It's not to change who you are, and it's not to deny the ADHD part of you, which, because there are so many affirming traits of ADHD. So yeah, I think that's the key thing.
Thank you. Yeah.
Conscious, Louise, you've been there for a while, and then Joanne. Do you want to unmute, Louise?
That might help, mightn't it? I just want to say I really enjoyed your conversation. I'm a systemic family therapist, and I've come here to learn what's the best systemic technique to be helping families, because we have a lot of people with different neurodevelopment, and I just feel I've just more focused on language and my own family and how neurodiverse my family is. And I just really loved the way that you came up with your own descriptions. And I could recognize that. Like, I think I put in the chat that I call my husband speedy and nerdy, and that we do that with each other. And it's kind of, it's not pathologizing, it's kind of validating, and it's creating an environment that, and we also call ourselves a bit weird, and people know us as a bit strange.
Yeah, absolutely.
We go and do weird things, like we go in the woods and look for things and nature, and for some people that seems a bit bizarre, but we kind of really embrace it, and I think it's helped the children as well.
Yeah, and we were talking about labels, like kind of feeling restricted by labels, and I think language is very important there, because obviously, if you're disclosing neurodivergence to an employer, right, you can say, well, I am autistic and therefore I have these legal rights under section whatever. But if you're interacting with people, you don't necessarily need to tell them you're autistic. Like, you can, and should feel you're able to do so proudly. But really, I guess nerd and slacker, they kind of encompass what those medicalized terms mean in practice. We're a bit weird to some people, but and they're normals, I guess, and that's fine. Fine to be a normal and to like normal things, but we like weird people things, and they're these things, and not all weird people are weird in the same way. And I think that just kind of demystifies it and a little bit destigmatizes it, or does it like makes it seem more human, like, because everybody who knows me would say, oh, Shani, she loves trees like a lot. And that wouldn't be like, that's not something pathological in most people's minds, I hope, about me. So I think, the language that we use is really important. And as my mum said, that was something that was very much inculcated in us from a young age. Like, weird is good. Like,
weird is definitely wonderful. And I think that it's interesting for you. I think for you, as therapists, that those are embraced, and to get families that are struggling because they're being marginalized because of, this pathologizing of autism in particular, to reclaim and to use words that they feel, just add some humanity, I guess. to
I
the
read
situation.
Autism last night after the first, and it just reminded me of that as well. And maybe it's about also helping families finding their own language, like you've done about the nerdy and the
Yeah, yeah,
there's more validating rather than, I don't know, like pathologizing or
yeah. I
something
mean,
to say.
it's interesting because, like Shani said, that you wouldn't go, you don't have to go around sort of saying you're autistic. But then I feel as an advocate and as an educator that what I want to do is reclaim that as well, and to say that people are proud of being autistic. We don't have autism. I don't carry it in a little bag. It's not something that I want to be cured of. I am autistic. This is me, this is my brain, and this is how it works, and it works slightly different to you. But also I think that to be really clear to everybody that autistic people, this is my experience of being autistic, and that is not the same as Shani's. It's not the same as my three sons. It's not. It is. This is my experience of it. This is my experience of it.
Someone's unmuted.
Oh, Monica, you were on mute there.
Pardon. I beg your pardon. I'm just conscious that Joanne is trying to come in, I think.
Yeah, I'll pop.
Cool.
Thanks, Louise.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? Because I'm in the car.
Oh gosh, yeah, we can hear you.
Hello, I'm sorry. Thank you both so much. That was inspiring and hit home, and it made me turn my own new scenario into, maybe I need to think of a bit of banter associated with identification. Two questions, please, really quick. First one, Shani, how long did it take to process and get the realization of grounding within the executive function? Because that kind of terrifies me since identification. Whether my executive functions got worse, I don't know, but it worries me about my job. How long did it take you to ground yourself and know the new you, as it were?
That's a really good question. I think that what I realized when I was diagnosed was all of the things that I was doing already that I was actually taking for granted, in terms of executive function, in terms of organization, in terms of all of those things. So I have, like, I'm a teacher at work. I have what I call my creepy document, which is a kind of it's just a Word document with a table in it of every period of the day, including like lunch and break and stuff. And I put in there like everything that I'm going to do and everything I need to remember. And I have done that for 15 years. But I didn't realize that nobody else was doing things like that. So I've got like millions of calendars, millions of external ways to kind of keep myself on track. And I didn't realize that everybody else didn't have to put in that much effort. And I think the diagnosis has made me realize that I am not, in fact, lazy or disorganized as I described myself as being, but in fact, I am like working twice as hard as people who aren't having to think about these things, in order to kind of like, just keep up, in inverted commas. So it was less of a question of kind of grounding myself in the new me and more of a question of recognizing what I'd been doing for all of my life so far and been very much taking for granted, and appreciating myself, especially my younger self, for having kind of intuitively figured out the things that I needed to do and done them. That said, if I guess if I'd had a diagnosis when I was younger, I probably would have made fewer adaptations of my own and requested more adaptations, like externally from other people. And I think that's the biggest thing. I think you said that you're worried your executive function's getting worse since you've been and I wonder if it's just you noticing yourself.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in there and say that regression, is so common, and actually I found that absolutely particularly in the last couple of years. Probably since I did sort of self-diagnose, so that I found my executive functioning went backwards. And that the strategies that, like Shani said, you have all these things that you do and you don't think that they are strategies. You just think, well, everybody does them, surely. They kind of stopped working. But apparently, I was speaking to a colleague of mine who researches as well in the field, and she was saying that it's very common for this period of regression. It's not really regression. What it is you're giving yourself grace to be you and to acknowledge that the environment is such a struggle. And so you're kind of almost like going, and it's like when you kick your shoes off when you come in and like your feet go, it's a bit like that. So and she was saying it can take a couple of years for you to kind of get back to where you were, but to not to worry about it as a regression, but to kind of almost lean into it and respect, like Shani says, the fact that, had she had that diagnosis before, she would have maybe demanded more adaptations, because it is the environment, as well that is fighting us. So yeah, just be kind to yourself is what I want to say.
Thank you. So that's absolutely amazing. That completely resonates, and thank you. That gives me so much hope. I've got one more quick question. Hormones and dual identification. Comment on that.
Hormones and dual identification. Okay, so you're speaking to a menopausal woman here on HRT. And I think everything blew up at the same time is what I'm going to say, Joanne. I mean, perimenopause. Again, practitioners need to be aware, they really need to be attuned to neurodivergence. And because I absolutely know, when I think back, my GP should have spotted that, should have spotted that there was something else. He also didn't spot perimenopause, it was I must be stressed at work because I was a woman, and I was and kind of dismissed that. So I'm not stressed at work. I can, how dare you comment on my ability to cope with work? That's nothing to do with it. So I do think that, how hormone treatment might interact with ADHD treatment, I don't know, but certainly it exacerbates all of those neurodivergent traits. And it might have been that sort of, it kind of made them appear in Technicolor. And maybe that's why I started to see it, but it's something, it's a field that we need more research in as well, and research done by neurodivergent women as well, not done to us, but done by us. I'm an absolute advocate for that.
It's one of the things.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you so much.
No problem.
It's one of the things that resonates for me also is that, being curious about we don't call them coping strategies or systems, or we call them life hacks that people have actually developed to kind of overcome some of the things that their autism or neurodivergence brings into their lives. And I think a lot of the time it's looking at, some of them can be positive, some of them can be negative, but I think it's partly to do with how we as systemic therapists begin to embrace that, rather than just giving solutions, which is
because, like I said before, Monica, it's an individualized experience. You know, this is my lived experience. It's not going to be the same as somebody else's, and so my life hacks, you know, might not work for somebody, but might be completely terrible for someone. But I mean, we're hoping that, like, through the podcast as well, we'll talk about those kind of things. You know, we'll have a session that's about, well, okay, how do we make sure that we get out of bed and brush our teeth and get in the shower every day, or, you know, just little things. Same foods. You know, I mean, that's a big thing in our house. Same foods. And if same foods go, like you say, having that individual experience is going to be really important.
So guys, I thank you so much. I mean, it's been so rich, and I know we have to finish and move on. So thank you both so much for joining us this afternoon. I think one of the things we did in the last session was we asked everybody to unmute and just show our appreciation for what you've given us today, which has been tremendous. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you
very
very
much.
much. Wonderful.
Thank you so much. It's been a real treat. Thank you very much. Really amazing. Really good.